everyone, welcome back to As Art with Nick and John and our special guest, Kyle. We're talking about the new Amazon Lord of the Rings, well, not Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth series is coming out. Obviously in As Art we love Lord of the Rings, so this should be a fun conversation. We're talking about kind of stuff that's way before Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and so we're going to be discussing some of the content that's in existence for that and where it might go. So Nick and Kyle, I'm going to be popping in here, but you guys have read that content, so go ahead and fill us in on what you think this is coming and what the show might be about. And the article as well.
First, I want to thank the OneRing.net for all the Lord
of
the Rings
forever.
Throughout the years, even before the movies. Thank you, OneRing.net. Man, they are always there for Lord of the Rings stuff. Thank you. That's so awesome.
Awesome content.
And then, so let's just jump into this. So we know it's going to be the Second Age, which is a part of the Silmarillion and another like Lost Tales stories and stuff like that they'll probably gather and take from. But the biggest thing I think is, so Lord of the Rings, there was like dialogue and story. There's not a lot of that in the Silmarillion. So there's going to be a lot of more creative freedoms when it comes to new characters they're probably going to add in the backgrounds, to dialogue, to maybe even changing some story plots. And
so let me ask, I haven't read that because I heard it was kind of harder reading versus the stories and the dialogues of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So is it presented more like what you would think of a traditional school history book, where it just gives you the basic dates and events and the names, but it's not going into details of stories and stuff like that? Is that more what it's presented like, or
do you want to answer, Kyle?
Yeah, so now it's been years since I've read the Silmarillion. I'm going to need to read it again before the series drops. But in the general timbre of it is, think of it like a Norse or Celtic epic, right? So it's going to name drop certain heroes that do great feats and stuff. They have huge broad sweeps of time, right, that occur. It can be fairly biblical in that sense, right? And such and such begat such and such, and then they did this and this stuff, and then this crazy thing happened to a city, right? So yeah, it's very much more like a zoomed out version of sweeping historical events.
Version. I like that.
That was perfect.
Yeah. So from the article of what they reported, I really liked it, because it sounds like they're saying we have this, that, and the other to pull from and recover this, that. I thought that was great because, like you guys are saying, it's kind of a canvas that has the roughest and broadest of strokes filled in as far as content. Then they're going to get to go in and do all of the intricate detail work in order to paint this huge, story for us. And that's kind of what I got from that article. And to me, that sounds wonderful, because they have, like you said, creative freedoms, but they're not bound to following exactly. And there's not the expectations that they had with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings when they're making that too. Because if you didn't put Tom Bombadil in the movies, people got upset. If you didn't follow The Hobbit exactly, which they certainly didn't, they added a lot. If they change stuff, people are getting upset, whereas this is a little bit more, all right, here is our rough outline, but we can do whatever we want to fill in between the lines, which is kind of cool.
I've only seen a little bit of the reaction to some of the details pertaining about the upcoming Silmarillion stuff for Amazon. I get a lot of mixed signals. On one hand, I see a lot of, not paranoia, but just maybe people are expecting it to not be good or to be a cash grab in some way. I think also because it's a company like Amazon, it is a corporate edifice, right? It's huge. On the bright side, it has the resources to make something really good, but at the same time, its primary interest is to make money. Now, if we take a look at what j.r.r. Tolkien did originally, just to create The Hobbit, his first book, right, and then the Lord of the Rings, and then the Silmarillion later, the original impetus for it wasn't to make money. He wanted to tell a story. He was creating a world, right, and he was in the folds of creative bliss in a way. Just enjoying creating it, and this isn't the case, because we know the products we got from that pure joy of creation of J.R.R. Tolkien, but now it's being handed over to something that's sort of like Sauron and the powers of Mordor, right? Is that it's a because one thing that J.R.R. Tolkien said the ring represented, at least in Lord of the Rings, was a machine, right? And technology, and I think we're kind of seeing that happen in our reality to an extent, or at least that's what people are expecting.
Now, I will say that I do appreciate the fact that, we look at New Line Cinema and they weren't the initial people. I think it was Miramax that initially had the scripts written and things like that for Lord of the Rings. But, I mean, that's a movie because studios are definitely out to make money. That doesn't mean that you don't have very passionate people that are the creatives that are wanting to create, stuff that's really awesome and
that's
tells
a good
great
point.
Story.
Yeah.
But, but you're right, though. I mean, you're completely right. When you have J.R.R. Tolkien, who's an educator, and wants to just create something, integrate a new language that he creates and things like that, you're going to get a different result. But that being said, I'm still very hopeful for this. I mean, if you look at Disney and all the entertainment they've given us with Marvel and Star Wars and stuff like that, and George Lucas, I mean, he wanted to build an empire, but he also wanted to tell good stories along the way. So it'll be interesting. I'm really looking forward to it for sure. And I like the idea that they have a lot of leeway in order to, and like Kyle said, they have endless funds. I don't know how much they're being allotted, but just to buy the license,
I think it's like the most expensive series so far already.
Yeah,
or something like the money that's been put into it already, or something.
Yeah,
something crazy like it's something one of those like crazy numbers where it's just like, whoa, all of the gold from Moria, dang, you know what I mean? Or like it's something like along that.
And
line.
let me ask this too. So I think the creator of Amazon, right? What's his name?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. He was saying that he wanted to make this the equivalent of Amazon's Game of Thrones, and a lot of people don't like that. I always, it's weird since I'm like a gaming person, I never played it, but World of Warcraft, when that came out, that was the first hugely successful MMO, and everybody for a lot of years was betting their entire company, all their money on creating the next big MMO, and a lot of people rose up and down, or failed right away because of that. And with Game of Thrones, it was so hugely successful, and there was such a demand for it. If you can get that quality, do you think it's bad that they're trying to shoot for that, or do you think it's still gonna? Does it even matter that they're even using it as inspiration? I feel like it's good to use things for inspiration.
Well, it's a funny thing, right? Because he wrote Game of Thrones, so it would be complete opposite of Lord of the Rings. That was his whole thing, right? Like that's why he had Tyrion. That's what it was like. The whole idea was he wanted to do something different than J.R. Tolkien. But now they're like, "Whoa, let's do Lord of the Rings as Game of Thrones." But I can see it working because spoilers, just in case you guys haven't read the books, or we're gonna go into book theory a little bit right here. Maybe I'll put a time here if we jump back to just Amazon discussion later on, where it's safe, out of the spoilers range. But obviously you have the men of Numenor, right? They're a big part of the Silmarillion. They capture Sauron, or he kind of lets himself get captured, because then he becomes like, he gets into the city, and then first he's a prisoner, then he ends up becoming the right hand of the king of Numenor, where it's like to the point where he convinces them to make human sacrifices to Malkor. I think that's the name of like the big bad god.
Molgoth.
Falkor.
There you go.
Falkor is the dragon in Neverending Story.
You're right. Yeah, I get it all mixed up. But yeah, I know it's been a while since I've even gone through this. But and basically it's to the point where, since he convinces them to basically, invade the Valnar, or the lands of the West or whatever, and then the gods get mad and they flood their kingdom and destroy them all, kind of thing. And I can see great Game of Thrones content of the deceiving, backstabbing, and because there's not much there that they have to go off of, but they can do full on King's Landing, where you have everyone kind of fighting for power in the right hand, and you have like Littlefinger going around and convincing, kind of, conniving his way in and stuff like that, where there's like the good righteous people that are like, no, this is wrong, and then they're like, kind of thing. So I can totally see Game of Thrones possibility, but I'm happy as long as it's good content, even if they stray off a little bit from the books, but it's like, it's good content. I'll be happy with it. I just don't want a bad show.
Right. Two things on that. So I don't know what Jeff Bezos said verbatim, right? That he wants his own Game of Thrones right out of this. But you can actually infer a lot of from just that statement, and I think people are kind of jumping to conclusions. Who knows? He could be talking about just I wanted to make as much money or as much have as much public impact as Game of Thrones did, right? Because it did both those things. And also, if you're going to make something like Game of Thrones, the Silmarillion would probably be it to do it, because we know the Silmarillion takes a very high level. It's very impersonal, right? We get to know these characters only as if a historian is telling it to us, right? Not necessarily like what their motivations are, how they're feeling, what the challenges they have to go through in their struggles, right? So this is ripe for exploration and actually having that Game of Thrones character, that level of character development, right, with some of these heroes. So I definitely hope it's not like the books. Actually, I think it's a fresh interpretation, and they kind of run with the ideas.
If it was just the books, it wouldn't work as a show. It would just be like the intro to Lord of the Rings. Then it was made this, and then it was destroyed, and then back to like that's what it would be, right? Like Kyle, like it wouldn't be an in-depth story.
Yeah, if anything, it'd be like a storytelling art piece, right? It could be they could tell a sweeping story and have really cool animations or like visuals, but that'd be about it.
That's about it.
That's like almost the Harry Potter Deathly Hallows animation, right? It's just giving you updated. Here's the backstory. But so let me ask you guys this. I don't want to go too far off topic if you guys want to, kind of circle back. But my question was, so Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite movie series of all time. We talk about it all the time because Nick and I are huge Tolkien heads, and obviously Kyle is too. But that should tell you everything you need to know. But that being the case, do you think the average consumer is as excited to revisit? Because obviously Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit have come and gone. There was a bunch of games, a bunch of spin-off things and stuff like that. Do you think people are going to be as excited to jump back into Middle-earth as we are? Or do you think it's kind of come and gone? Or maybe it's going to be like the prequels, where when the prequel trilogy for Star Wars came back, everybody was... they weren't even really fans. They're like, oh yeah, that Star Wars is really cool. Here we're going to get new content. I'm just curious what you think, if it's going to be as popular as I think Amazon's hoping it's going to be.
Oh, I think it will.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing with several streaming services is them really starting to rev up their franchises, right? I think that's actually going to be a big thing in this decade. Is we're going to see streaming services cultivate their own franchises and IP,
it's true.
And build them out. And I think Amazon is hoping that maybe the Lord of the Rings
will be their
property
cinematic universe.
Will be their cinematic universe, right?
Do we know? Do they have? Perpetual usage of this license? Is it for a fixed amount of time, a fixed amount of content?
They got a lot of money.
What's the legal standpoint they have right now with all this? That's what I don't know.
I don't think we're ever going to know. But really, I wanted to touch back on like the story stuff really quickly with the Game of Thrones and stuff like that. So one thing, everyone loved Game of Thrones, right? Because everyone loved the story, the show, everything was good. And then once the writers had to do their own dialogue, the show crashed. It was like fire and burn. It was like, we hate the last couple of seasons because it sucked, and they had no more book dialogue to go off of, so they had to make up their own dialogue to complete the story and the way they saw fit and stuff. And we have that issue here with Lord of the Rings. So who are the showrunners? They're these two young guys, JD like Payne or something like that, and the other guy's like Patrick something. They're from Bad Robot, so they're fresh from Bad Robot, which is J.J. Abrams. So they're the ones backing the whole show. Like they're like the Dan and Daves of the Game of Thrones universe. So it's young blood. Peter Jackson was pretty fresh. We know he did horror films and stuff. And he really didn't do anything as epic.
Indie horror films.
Yeah, so he did nothing as epic as Lord of the Rings. And then he comes out with Lord of the Rings and makes him like the most like technical director, like close to James Cameron level of like technology scale and how to do all this stuff. It's like, wait a minute, this guy was like, bloody props and stuff. Like he had nothing to do with what he did with
Huge
Lord
gamble
of the
by
Rings.
New Line Cinema for a huge gamble for sure.
I mean, so and that's another thing. I mean, you guys are you guys familiar with the name Neil Blomkamp?
I know the name for sure.
He's
have to remind me,
he's the director of District 9.
That's right. Yes.
Right?
Mm.
And that was done on a budget of $30 million.
He was kind of aided by Peter Jackson as well, right? As far as getting budget advice and things like that.
Yes, yes, but still one of those obscure directors, right? So that's the thing. Of course, there is plenty of room to fail epically, but also there's hope in which we might actually get something pretty magical.
Yeah. Wow, Sam. Wasn't that the quote Sam said to Mr. Frodo? There's some good left in the world, Mr. Frodo.
Yeah.
And it's worth fighting for.
But there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
Yes.
That's like totally reminding me of like the Sam quote right there.
Usually I'd say Nick was being a huge nerd, but we're already talking about Lord of the Rings, so I can't brag on him that time. But you know what? I mean, at some point, Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas were new graduates from UCLA and USC, and then they
haven't announced the directors though. So those are just the showrunners, basically. So
you would think that you would always want these really established people working on these huge IPs, but at the same time, you've got to give people a chance. And I love when it's a new type of thinking. I love when it's unknown actors, for better or for worse, for the actors, because you're Luke Skywalker for the rest of your life, you're Mark Hamill or Carrie Fisher or whatever. But it gives you the opportunity to really define a new look and idea. Mm-hmm. And obviously, they have a lot they have to live up to as far as the look of the New Line Cinema films and things like that. But at the same time, I love the idea of what you guys are saying, where it's just like the broad strokes and they get to basically fill in all the gaps there, because that's just great creative freedom. And it sounds like it covers such a huge amount of time. They could probably have, depending on how close they want to zoom in on those specific little sections of the book, they could have series indefinitely, like going on forever if they really wanted to, until people start feeling like it's overexposure, like the Marvel, cinematic universe, things like that. But really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, and it's going to be nice. There's not going to be a Frodo, a Sam, a Aragorn, a Legolas. We'll get like Elrod and some of the older characters too and stuff like that. But it'll be fun to just see new characters. That's been my biggest complaint about the Star Wars universe. Like, I love Mandalorian and all the new characters, but then they're like, oh, remember Luke, remember they like start, and then it's like, we're doing a Boba Fett show, we're doing a Lando show, it's like, no, just there's so much beautiful content in the galaxy. Just do something fresh. We already saw stories from these characters, and it'd be cool to just continue on and see new characters. So I like the idea too of just like a name in like a flashback, like he was a warrior that killed 5 Balrogs before he died or whatever. But then it's like, cool, maybe we can actually know the guy's backstory up to the battle and stuff like that. So
speaking of which, Amazon, give me more Balrogs. I want more Balrogs.
I don't know if that's gonna happen. I think that's mostly the first age, huh, Kyle? The Balrogs.
Balrogs? Well, I mean, they exist technically throughout all ages, but they were created.
But I think it was mostly the first age where they were like armed. They were like there was like an army of Balrogs, and like elves would go and take them on. Like these epic elves would like kill.
How cool! Epic elves.
It was a cool thing. I think there was even a human who did it too. And as like a punishment or whatever, didn't the guy like tie him to a chair and he had to watch his house line suffer or something like that? I can't remember.
I can't remember that. That sounds insane.
I actually don't think that's the Silmarillion. I think that's the Child of Huron or something, or one of the side stories by Christopher.
Children of Huron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so one thing you would talk to revisit a little bit, Nick. You talking about how the writers took control of the show for Game of Thrones, and it tanked. So you might also want to change my expert status to apologist status instead, because I want to say something. So George R.R. Martin, okay, remember he had how long did it take him to write his first book or two?
It's not done. The first book was written like 20 to 30 years ago or something like that.
Right.
Man.
But that's the thing, is like, how long did it take him to write that, right? It probably took him quite a bit of time. He had time on his side, right? He was a relatively obscure author back then. Mm-hmm. Okay? So he's not under the radar of like the entertainment community or anything. He's just accountable to himself, and he's got time. The thing about the writers on that show is they already have a few seasons under their belt. They're working on a studio setting. They have quite a high turnover rate in terms of just writing stuff up and getting it out there so they can start production, right? So there's a lot of other dynamic elements that contributed to perhaps why that writing wasn't as good, right? So I think that's why I don't know, when people gave those guys a bad rap, I'm like, people have no clue. Like, do you understand
really
the pressure?
Hard.
Yeah. And it also could have been the showrunners wanted to end the show so they can get on to Star Wars, but then obviously we know that didn't work out.
Right. And of course, by no reason does this mean I think that the last season of Game of Thrones was great. I actually didn't like it, but I can understand why it was so, right? So.
Well, and I have to just chime in and say, like, I watched all the seasons leading up to the last season in just a couple months. And
you maniac! No,
it was amazing. I wish I could watch everything like that. But the idea of what I want to say is I wasn't as disappointed by the last couple seasons as most people because I didn't have 9 years or 7 years or whatever, eight seasons, right? 8 years of my life invested in following the story. When you're not that attached to something, you've been following it for that long. It's not that. I liked it. I thought everything was fine. It was as good as the first few seasons? No, but I mean, how many movies start off great and then they don't end as strong as they started? Like, that's just a common thing. So it depends on how close you were to it as well. But I'm super pumped about the Amazon stuff. Like, they have the budget, they have the resources, and if they didn't have The Boys and a few other major things on Amazon Prime, I wouldn't be as confident. But with how good those things have turned out, like they have the talent, so it's a great thing.
Kyle, I was just thinking, you mentioned like how the Amazon is technically like Sauron and Saruman and stuff like that. It reminded me so much of like when they made the Hobbit films, right? Like the Hobbit movie was all about greed and how dragon's gold is bad for you, and they're like, let's make 3 movies out of this so we can make more money. You know what I mean? It's like the same thing. Like, no, this better not be a Hobbit thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
and you know what? That goes to show that it can be. I think Welsh is her last name. She was the woman who did a lot of the writing for the script on the Hobbit movies and expanded and enjoyed.
But there was a lot of
Peter
issues
Jackson.
behind the scene with the Hobbit movie, though.
Yes, for
Because,
sure. But I mean,
they were writing when they started filming because, what's his name left? The other director left for the story.
Toro.
So they were technically writing scripts and trying to build sets. Like, there was a lot of things where they were just like, for the action stuff, they're like, just have them swing at stuff and we'll fix it in the editing room. And it's even amazing that those films even came together they did and made money. Because, like, when you talk about, like, the struggles, like, the real struggles, like, they had, like, 4 different directors at one point. Like, they had Andy Serkis directing. They had, like, all these directors because they had no idea what to do and the time was out. They were writing scripts and it's just like, it's a nightmare.
And we have to emphasize that is the polar opposite of what they did with Lord of the Rings. They did so many run-throughs of storyboards and animatics, and they even hired other actors just to voice the lines in the animatic. Like, they went through so many iterations before they filmed anything, whereas here, this sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean for the third movie, where the day they're getting on the set, the writers, since they didn't want changes to be made by the studio, they were writing right before they started filming. So they were literally waiting for their lines, and that sounds kind of like what happened with The Hobbit a little bit. Maybe not to that extreme, but
it did for sure. That's why a lot of it was shot on green screen too, because they didn't even have time to build the backgrounds. That's how crazy it was. You know what I mean? Like,
but Amazon, it seems like, especially if they're investing this much money into things, they don't have to worry about pleasing as many parties and things like that. I think it's going to come out quite well. Whether it's received as warmly as Lord of the Rings was, I'm not sure. But
that's tough, though.
I'm super excited for it.
That's tough. Just like how I don't think any Star Wars movies will ever compare to the first 3. You know what I mean? Like, it's on such a pedestal. You know what I mean? Like, nothing's ever going to compare to like even the Harry Potter movies. If they try to bring back the actors, it's never going to compare to the original 8. You know what I mean? Like, it can't, because our expectations are so high. It's never gonna reach it.
It's a period of time. It's culturally, where we were as far as looking for that content. I mean, sometimes it happens. I mean, who would have thought that Empire Strikes Back would have been better than, or considered?
Well, I'm talking about like the trilogy thing.
Yes,
like a complete trilogy done. Kind of thing.
So there is a jewel of enjoyment though about prequels from pre-existing franchises or movies. Even like this is also true for like historical films, right? So one thing you get from the Silmarillion, we're going to get to see these new places, these new characters, these new experiences and stories. But at the same time, we have a sense of predestination to it. We know where things are leading because we have already a set of stories that it will eventually lead to. And it's kind of exciting, right? You're like, oh, that means that this will later be this, right? Yeah. And it's kind of cool to connect those dots. The Silmarillion actually covers all 3 ages.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's going to cover the first, the second, and the events leading up until, the stuff that we saw in the films that actually we're seeing the historical events, at least in that world, right? Yeah. Of what transitions from the Third Age to the Fourth Age, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, with Amazon, they said specifically they're covering the Second Age, though, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool.
Which I think is good because, they should hold off for the First Age because I can see that being a VFX budget nightmare.
Or who knows? Maybe they just refer back to it in stories, right? And it's like when the world was young and first
everything was created by song.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's stuff called dust, and there's angels. Wait, what?
I mean, it gets pretty crazy because the Valinor starts to do their own creation. There's one that wants to create the Ents. There's one that created the dwarves, and they all create different things. And it's so awesome, the backstory behind it all. It really is cool. But there's no wizards. Wizards don't come until the Third Age.
Oh, wow.
So we won't see the blue wizards, we won't see the brown wizard, we won't see the white wizard, and we won't see the gray wizard.
We will not see them as the Istari. Remember, because that's the Third Age. But before they were the Istari, they were the Mirar.
Oh, Mirar,
right?
yes, sorry.
Yes, so they're kind of like demigods, I guess you could say, right? So we might
see a different form of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But they weren't involved in the actual Middle Earth, though. They would be
they weren't.
If they go to Mount Olympus and they have all the gods there and stuff like that singing, that's when we would see Gandalf drinking wine or something like that. No, smoking. No, we would see him smoking his favorite weed.
Heck yeah.
The love of the halfling's weed or shrooms or whatever it is.
Clouded your mind. So any other thoughts, you guys? I mean,
I think we had a lot on that, and I
Yeah.
am so excited for more Lord of the Rings content. If you guys want to hear more Lord of the Rings content, let us know. Me and John have also gone back to the Ralph Bakshi films, right? Is that
Ralph Bakshi? Yes, Ralph Bakshi.
And we compared the animation to the live action and stuff, which was a lot of fun.
Super fun videos.
We're hopefully going to get Kyle in on some of that because I would love to get his opinion with the artwork and stuff like that.
I did love those movies as a kid. So.
Yes,
we ended it with the Balrog right now. I think that's where we left off. And it's a man in a pig bear suit or whatever. It's Man Bear Pig from South Park,
And the orcs are wearing sniper leaves on them.
It's so awesome.
It's so cool. If you guys haven't seen those
please
videos,
watch
check those
that.
out. Yeah.
Please watch that. Please make that. I'll put that on your list. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, please watch those movies. It's like watching the Star Wars Christmas special.
No, it's better than that.
I know it is. I'm just having fun, John.
Yeah.
And then go visit Kyle's excellent Instagram. He does awesome sketches. He's such a creative artist. If you like his artwork, we've been putting on shirts and stuff. We don't really push it too much, but we really like his artwork, and they make really cool designs for clothing. And we're like, hey, if other people want to wear it, let's throw it up. So go check out asart.space and check out Kyle's Instagram. We'll put the link and all that stuff.
All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on the next AsArt. Ciao.